In 3, 2, 1. We are live for the 8th episode of Burning Subjects, featuring, well, Jim actually isn't here this episode because, say at least, he's across the world from here and our time zones are very different. But to say the least, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the Strasburg Railroad. But before anything, I apologize that this podcast takes place on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday, as most of the people who normally are on weren't able to join yesterday. So I brought them on today instead.
But yes. The next episode on Tuesday will be another top 10 list, which we will reveal at the end.
Yes. By the way, don't pay attention to the fact that I'm eating wings. But
You're eating weed?
Wings!
Ew, I want to have some.
Okay. But either way, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the Strasburg Railroad, the fanatic scenic railroad that everyone loves, also known as the Road to Paradise. But we're going to wait for one of our guests to arrive before we actually begin. Okay. To say the least, there's a certain engine that he should probably talk about.
Yes.
Hold up.
But first, let's talk a little bit about the history of the Strasburg Railroad.
Good idea.
The Strasburg Railroad began its operation back in the year 1832. Around the time, they operated some of the steam locomotives, as the railroad was originally a horse-drawn railroad until it purchased a second-hand Norris-built 420 steam locomotive named the William Penn. Throughout the years, the railroad would be a good success for many years. Until then, in 1926, the railroad purchased one of the first diesel locomotives, which is a Plymouth Switcher, number 1. Now, Plymouth number 1 is, of course, a Plymouth diesel, and it was built in 1926, and it was used for the main railroad until 1958, when the railroad would begin doing their excursion service for tourists.
But yeah.
Plymouth 1, Plymouth 1 is definitely my favorite Plymouth locomotive of the railroad, and today it's still operating strong at the railroad itself, usually operating on rare special occasions such as cab experiences or even towing 2 passenger cars during Plymouth Day. But sometime in the next few weeks, Plymouth 1 will be operating in the Strasburg Railroad's photo charter. That photo charter.
Before we get to the actual, where we start talking about the locomotives, let me take a look at what we got in the stream. The Unknown Sinner 636 says Nazi train, Nazi golden train. What?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Right.
That's all they said, but okay.
Anyway, back to business.
But
Plymouth 1 will be part of upcoming photo charter event titled Return of the Plymouth, where Plymouth 1 will be operating photo charters excursion. And I plan to go there on October 17th, or at least 16th, just to see at least the steam locomotives there.
Well, I guess since we're still waiting, let's...
Why don't we talk about...
Yeah, let's start talking about the actual locomotives. So we're going to do it in a very particular order. From the first locomotive...
I already started off with one of the first diesels of the roster, the Plymouth 1.
But now we're going to talk about from their first locomotive to the most recent locomotive that has come to their ground. So, first engine we're going to be talking about is none other than Canadian National number 7312.
Or as many of us would like to call it,
Strasburg 31. But, this little 060 switcher is a very interesting candidate for an excursion life. since most of the engineers that actually operated the locomotive constantly said that it was ugly, but and it was also too small for the life. But they didn't care about that. The locomotive itself was more of a nostalgia factor, and well, it achieved that pretty nicely with a hardworking locomotive and exactly what they needed. And the thing is, Canadian National 7312 was the first steam locomotive to be brought back into FRA service, which is an interesting thing, isn't it? But either way, Canadian National 7312 has been part of the Strasburg Railroad for how long now?
Let's see, it's been around since June of 1959. So let's see, 2020 minus 1959 equals. Hold on 1 second. She's been around for 61 years.
Wow! And she's still in service. Well, sort of.
Well, sort of.
Right now, she's under her federal mandated inspection. But, most likely over the years, 7312 will return to steam pretty soon.
Hopefully. Because this year I've only seen all 4 engines, but the only I haven't seen was 31. And I hope if she gets restored, I hope to go see her someday.
But anyway, next is the one that I'm going to go solo on. Reading 1187, which recently I've become a little bit obsessed with. In fact, recently I made a Cylinder Cox exclusive Gmod version of the 1187 in 3 different liveries, which I'll talk about. But anyway, onto the 1187 story. 1187 is a 040 anthracite burning Camelback locomotive built by the Reading for switching, with a tractive effort of only 20,000 pounds. Not quite. I mean, wait, was it 20,000 or? Yeah, I think it's 20,000. 20,000 pounds of tractive effort. Not quite the powerhouse, but it's just perfect for switching and yard duties, which it did for over 60 years in the Reading Company. And it's important to note that over time, it actually had to switch a couple of things. One, it actually used to have a circular headlight. A circular number plate. You heard me. It used to have a but anyway, and it also used to have a different tender until it finally got a bigger tender when it was being used more often. Well, bigger, quote unquote. But then in the 50s, steam was of course starting to die. But the thing is, most Camelbacks would have actually been scrapped immediately. But 1187 was the lucky one to be taken out. And was bought by the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company for, of course, switching once again. It was
I think it's the E&G Brook Iron Company.
Pretty sure it's the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, man.
Oh, all right.
But either way, it spent another 10 or so years working as a switcher again, where it was renumbered to number 4, which, fun fact, I could only find one small video of 1187 operating, and it was when he was at the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. But then, in the 60s, when the Strasburg Railroad was young and blossoming, they decided to purchase a second locomotive to operate beside 31, as mentioned earlier. And so 1187 moved to the Strasburg Railroad under its own power, creating a sort of cartoony story. You know, like an engine just gets, oh, I'm going on an adventure. And you know what I mean.
Gee, I wonder where I heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Don't. Anyway. But to say the least, I just realized how many times I say it, to say the least, and anyway. But either way, the locomotive arrived at Strasburg under darkness because of a delayed sort of timing because they had to fix a broken spring. But under the cover of darkness, the 1187 arrived to Strasburg under its own power. And, for the next 2 or 3 months, they started servicing the locomotive to get it ready. And its first excursion came, where, mainly it just went back and forth. But the thing is, approximately 6 weeks later, the locomotive was sadly put back into yard duties because there were a couple of problems with the locomotive that restricted it from going out too much. They found it difficult to fire the locomotive with bituminous coal, even though the locomotive was built to burn anthracite coal, which burns much slower than the more common bituminous coal that most steam locomotives use. And so they didn't know that it was an anthracite coal burner, so they just continued firing with bituminous coal. But the boiler pressure dropped rapidly because of that insufficient value. And so, of course, because of its weakened performance, they put it back into yard duties, and basically helping with the runarounds at the station. But before the fire dropped for the last time, it pulled one last excursion, a Baltimore chapter, which for the NRHS convention. But then, about a month later, the locomotive's flue time finally expired, and the locomotive was moved into the shed under its own power for the last time. And, for the next 40 years, the locomotive stayed outside the Strasburg shop with a very, very uncertain future, as they thought that the problems that plagued it before would happen again, even though those problems were their fault. But either way, after 40 years of sitting outside exposed to the elements to the point where the cab looked like it was made of wood, the locomotive was finally bought by the Age of Steam Roundhouse recently. And, recently it was moved there and is hopefully going to get a cosmetic restoration at least. But I keep saying this, there is a very tiny, the tiniest chance that they will ever get it running again. I mean, as I said, tiny chance. It's highly unlikely, but the smallest chance is there. If they actually do it, that'll be impressive. But for now, 1187, once it's cosmetically restored, will always be remembered as Strasburg number 4. But either way, on to the next locomotive. Let me see what order. Yes, Canadian National 89. Michael, would you like to take the mic?
Yes, I do. Canadian National 89 is a two-seater loco built by the Canadian Locomotive Company in February 1910. It was originally built for the Grand Trunk Western as number 1009, but later in 1919 it was renumbered to 911.
911.
Oh, that's horrible, but okay.
Yes, I know it is kind of horrible because of what happened, but we all get the point.
Yeah.
I mean, we have two first responder units for Norfolk Southern and CSX that are numbered 911. Remember?
What? Yeah.
I almost spit out my chicken.
Anyway, back to the history. But most likely, 911 would be renumbered to 89, beginning in 1951. And for 89's career in the Canadian National, well, it's currently unknown. But it appears it spent its last part of working life in Quebec before being retired in the late 1950s. In 1961, 89 was purchased by New England seafood magnate and steam locomotive collector, and we all know who his name is, F. Nelson Blount. 89 was used on the Green Mountain Railroad in 1965 to remove the engine across Connecticut River to Bellow Falls, Vermont. And 89 would become Blount's favorite locomotive until his death in 1967. In 1972, 89 was finally sold to the Strasburg Railroad. But during its move there, 89 would come across a problem. Hurricane Agnes struck, and 89 was stranded leaving 89 to be spent several days submerged in rail yard, but luckily it was not damaged. However, when it arrived at Strasburg, it was face east and would remain that way until the turntable was built for the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. But luckily, once the turntable was fixed, 89 would be able to continue rolling passenger service for the Strasburg Railroad. And today, 89 is currently in her original Canadian national appearance. And I got to see her this year in 2020, because the past few years I've only seen 90, 475, and 15. But now I got to finally see the Canadian mogul.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also another one that also survives in Pennsylvania, 89's sister, number 91, built for the Middletown and Humboldt Railroad. Yeah, but this is both focusing on 89. Hopefully I get to go see 89 again this October.
Well, that's 89, but I'm going to see if we can wait for Steven to get here so we can talk about the next engine. Well, the next engines.
But until then, let's talk about another diesel locomotive. Let's talk about the motor car they have, number 10. Now, number 10 is part of the historic Lancaster, Oxford, and Southern Railroad, which was one of the last pieces of rolling stock from the long-forgotten Little Railroad that ran basically from 1912 to 1918. 10, of course, was a motor car built for push-pull service. And of course, this little car was intended to replace the railroad's steam locomotive, therefore reducing both maintenance and cost of moving passengers along the line during a time when the small railroad was plagued with financial troubles. However, 10 only saw life for 3 years on the LONS, and the railroad was never recovered from its financial difficulties. The railroad ceased operations in 1918 and was sold for scrap in 1919. But sometime after 1919, 10 was sold to the Grace River Railroad in New York State, where it remained there until 1960 when it was sold to Winston Gottschalk of the Strasburg Railroad. Accidentally, though, a car was restored in 1973 and was even leased to other railroads until 1984, where it returned to Strasburg in 1985 and ran there until 1991. But luckily, back in 1997, the car was re-entered into service, and today, the 10 still runs today as a good old rail car. Yeah.
I just hope that Steven will arrive in. I guess this is a good time to look in the chat for real quickly. The tank guy says, "Hi, did someone say Nazi?" And it looks like they deleted a message. Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, we really need. Yeah, I know.
Why don't we talk about another diesel? How about number 8618, the SW switcher?
Okay.
Now, Strasburg Railroad number 8618 is a SW8 locomotive built by the Electric Motor Division in 1952. 8618 was originally built when the Strasburg was built for the New York Central Railroad as a switcher. Throughout its life, it would continue operating with New York Central until it was moved for Penn Central and Conrail. But around the mid-2000s, the 8618 was purchased by the Strasburg Railroad to replace their other switching locomotive, Pennsylvania Railroad 44th Hunter number 9331, which is now at the Walkersville Southern Railroad. Today, 8618 still operates today, hauling freight cars, and even does rare passenger excursions from time to time. And for specific Dallas Thomas events, it even gets to cosplay as Mavis, the diesel. The quarry diesel, that is. And I gotta say, the face they made for Mavis looked kind of good.
Oh, and speaking of faced engines. I guess while we're waiting for Steven, we shall talk about a certain 060 that
But I thought we were gonna save that for later.
I guess I'm thinking that we should maybe.
You said put it in order. Remember?
Oh yeah. We're crap. Okay. Well, we still gotta wait for Steven.
Let's see. Well, I can talk a little bit about Plymouth number 2.
Well,
That's the second Plymouth, sir.
okay.
Now, Plymouth 2, there's not much history I could find of it, but I do know that it was built that 2 is also nicknamed Dinky. Is a 10-ton Plymouth locomotive built in the year 1930, and it was used during construction of Holdland and Safety Harbor dams. After sometime around 1984, Plymouth was purchased by the Strasburg Railroad, will be used for operation as a switch locomotive, and of course, used for a little while on passenger descriptions. And of course, just like I said earlier, it would cosplay as a Thomas engine. And for 2020, number 2 would cosplay as Rusty. Because of the COVID-19 situation that we're in right now, they had to cancel the hour Thomas excursions. But at least they did a day out with Thomas, full run excursion with Thomas. We'll talk about Thomas later.
Well, let's look at the stream again. Okay. Talk about a Soviet Tesla. What's with you, Josh? I know you, Josh. Ow. Well, I guess while we're waiting, I might as well show you guys this. This is my Broadway Limited imports. Paragon Sound, Rolling Thunder, Reading T1, number 2100. I got it in January. I got it for Christmas last year, but in January, I think I overfilled the smoke fluid to the point where it flooded. But finally, after 8 months, I got her back, and she's in perfect working condition. It's just really nice to have my favorite steam locomotive back in my hands. I'm hunting weapons. Yes. We're still waiting for Steven.
As he never comes.
If he doesn't come, then
We'll just have to go on.
Yeah. Let's wait another 3 minutes.
Did you hear of, or at least see Steven's channel?
Yeah.
And how he's basically taken his scuba gear fetish too far.
What?
Yeah, you heard me right.
Scuba gear?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, he took his scuba gear fetish a little too far.
Let me see this. Or do I even dare see it?
Alright, so basically his YouTube PFP is now a scuba man, and his latest 2 videos are not only on Baby Einstein, but it's got the scuba man.
Why?
This man has gone from some random 5-chime to some fucking scuba man.
I don't think that's really true, but...
But, alright, I think we have waited long enough, so let's go on to the next locomotive then.
1223?
Yep, 1223. 1223, and 7002. Well,
Right.
the thing is, I don't know much about these locomotives, and that's why I wanted Steven to. Did someone join?
Well, I can talk about the 1223.
Okay.
Now, Pennsylvania Railroad 1223 is a 440 American locomotive built in 1905 for the Pennsylvania Railroad, built by their own Altoona works. This locomotive is classified as a B16SB locomotive, as these locomotives are built for high-speed passenger trains with tail driving wheels. The 1223 was used to haul these passenger trains, but when she was built, she was being superseded by even larger engines, and the Penty itself were pioneering steel cars, which the public soon demanded for the increase in safety. Eventually, 1223 was rebuilt with smaller driving wheels for local freight service, having been replaced on passenger trains by engines like the Pennsylvania Railroad 460, which is an E6 Atlantic, or the Pennsylvania Railroad 1361, a K4 Pacific. By the year 1920, most of the railroads had forgotten about the Pennsy 440s, even the Boston, Maine, Canadian Pacific railroads. But luckily, 1223 was able to survive and be preserved. After it was preserved, it was sent to the Strasburg Railroad in 1965, where it was leased and was restored to operational condition. Throughout its career, 1223 had appeared in 2 movies, the first one being The Broadway Limited in 1941, which was a film about the Broadway Limited train that was being run from New York to Chicago. And of course, many of us know the 1969 film Hello, Dolly, where 1223 was used for that movie.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. I don't know that movie.
Oh, well, I know Hello, Dolly because of the Wally music in it.
Yeah, you guys remember Penzi, right?
Yes, Arthur?
Yeah?
Yeah, Arthur. Me and him watched the movie together recently, and we have noticed a couple really good details in that film. For example, asked backwardly, the this Pennsylvania Railroad 440 is cosplayed as a New York Central and Hudson River locomotive.
Why?
Yeah, it's a Pennsylvania locomotive, but it's of the New York Central and Hudson River. I mean, they did a pretty good job with all the detailing and such. And for the film itself, productions aside, it's actually pretty good. Music's pretty good, characters pretty good, story's pretty good.
Yeah, the film is pretty good. After, of course, 1223 appeared in Hello, Dolly, it was returned back. It will return to original Pennsylvania Railroad livery and will continue operating excursions until 1989, when it was time for the engine to retire. Today, she is sitting at the Rail Museum in Pennsylvania next to another locomotive, a certain E7 442 Atlantic, number 7002. Originally, however, there was a 7002 in the Pennsylvania Railroad roster. It goes back to August 1902, where the original 7002 was built as an E2 locomotive.
No, not that kind of E2.
Grow up!
No,
it's
we're
not
not talking about the LVSDR E2s. That will be later when we talk about the other one. We're talking about the E2 442 Atlantic locomotive, built by the Pennsylvania Railroad Juniata shops in Altoona.
Yes.
Yes, but this 7002 was originally numbered 8063. And of course, after the original 7002 was retired and scrapped, the 8063 was renumbered to 7002 and was placed on exhibit at the 1939 New York World Fair and the Chicago Railroad Fair, and was an exhibit of the world's fastest steam engine. In 1979, 7002 was transferred over to the Rail Museum of Pennsylvania to be leased to the Strasburg Railroad for operational condition, mostly as a stand-in for their Canadian National 89, which was undergoing a major overhaul for the most of the 1980s. 7002 was usually used on half-hour train excursions and would even double head with 1233 in the summer of 1985 to Harrisburg, as well as a trip to Philadelphia on May 8, 1986. And 7002 also ran over to Hanover, Duncan, and Gettysburg on November 19, 1988 to celebrate the 125th anniversary of the Abraham Lincoln trip over the same road to make the Gettysburg address. And just like 1223, 7002 was also retired from service. And today, both 1223 and 7002 are sitting together side by side at the Rail Museum, Pennsylvania's rolling stock. I hope sometime in the future 1223 and 7002 get restored sometime, because we need more Pennsylvania Railroad steamboats to be brought back into preservation. They were great locals. We got Pennsylvania Railroad 643 on the other hand,
which is an 060, and
well, at least we got the T1 Trust for that.
well, hold on, guys. Don't you think it's kind of pathetic that the only currently operational Pennsylvania locomotive is an 060?
No.
Okay. Just me?
Mainly because the problem with, restoring locomotives in America to operational condition is mostly the expensive parts that can't really be made nowadays. Most notably, the whole cast steel frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you're gonna have to make an entirely new one if that thing breaks. New cast, new everything. In Britain, on the other hand, they don't need to worry about that. Or at least as much. Mainly because their locomotives are built with far simpler equipment. Hence why there's a lot more of them still around. And a lot more of them operational.
Yes. Well, wait, what's the next engine we're gonna...
Let's see. I think after them we go to
yeah, we really need to wait for Stephen on this one in particular.
Yeah, but if
he needs to be here to talk about this one.
Yeah. I've been messaging him all this time and he hasn't responded to one.
Well, I'm gonna look at the stream chat real quickly. Pingus.
Yeah.
There was a man who sucked Biden, and we've never heard of him since. What? Spy wants your mother. Hippity hoppity, I want the Discord nowity.
Spy wants your mother.
The spy is with your mother, derp man. Heavy wants sandwich.
Hands want sandwich.
Piss time?
Piss time.
I want Cylinder Cogs Discord. Cylinder Cogs. It's Cylinder Cock.
Yes, it is Cylinder Cox, mate.
Man, what is it with you guys and cocks? Seems pretty gay, not gonna lie.
Because we're just talking about... It's Cyander Cock.
Cyander Cock? Who's Cyander?
Cyander Cock. It reminds me of that, am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? 38 plus 2 weeks. Pregnant? I think my dog is pregnant.
Luigi board?
It's gas deep.
Alright, this is getting...
It says it's gas deep penetration. Okay. Oh boy.
This...
This is...
Where is he?
One
He's...
second. Okay, I'm messaging him.
Yeah.
I still just imagine Cyandercock. Please join. I want in on Cyandercock's Discord. I want in on Cyandercock's Discord. No, it's Cyandercock. Is going. Okay. Please join. Please join, Steven.
Yeah, please join, because if we can't get Steven to join, I'll probably get Owen to join, just for change.
Owen.
You know.
Yeah, I know Owen. I know Owen.
Because...
Yeah, Owen has never really been on one of these streams, has he?
Because let's see, we still need to talk about 475, 90, 15, and 611. And maybe talk about some lower steam locomotives that may visit Strasburg after we talk about the 611. Steven, if you're hearing this, please join the voice chat. We need...
We need you, Steven! Save!
Steven, if you can hear us, join. We'll have to be hearing you.
Wait. I think I know.
Stalking your room.
I think I know how we can summon him. 433 can't operate in the preservation era.
Adult Simba is sexy.
Norfolk Western 433 will visit 475 sometime in the future for a Norfolk Western steam reunion. If it gets restored.
722 is getting restored to operation. Well, guess he's not alive. Anyway. He's dead.
Here, hold up. I have something.
What?
Let me just get this and drop it in, where should I drop this? I'll send it in general.
Okay.
Alright.
Well, I guess since we're still waiting, is there anyone at the stream who has questions for me?
Nope.
Well, I'm pretty sure.
And there we are.
Yes. Hopefully Dale will get his attention.
That's definitely going to get his attention.
Yeah, and of course, Steven's going to be like, what did you say about Adult Simba?
You're welcome.
Simba, more like Simpa.
Just Simba. It's funny because he's an ultra sim.
Let me see what else. Ooh. 22.
Wait. What are some other locomotives that would be there that have visited Strasburg that I just don't know?
Well, there was one that was at Strasburg but didn't get to operate. I think that one would be Wilmington and Western number 98.
Did Reading and Northern 425 go to Strasburg?
No, we saved that for later, but locomotives, let's talk a little bit about 98, because 98 did had a life at Strasburg for only a few years before moving to the Wilmington and Western. So I'll do the explanation of number 98. Now, Wilmington and Western 98 is a 440 locomotive built around 1909 in Connecticut, New York, built by Alco. She worked as a passenger service on the Mississippi Central before being retired in December of 1944. In 1947, Pauline Spence purchased 98 for the Committee Southern and later the Louisiana Eastern. Later on, in January of 1960, Thomas C. Marshall and P. Clarence Marshall purchased the locomotive with the intent of operating her on a proposed weakened steam force railroad in Wilmington, Delaware. To make sure that it would be ready for operational service in Wilmington, Delaware, it was moved to the Stratford Railroad to be put into storage until the facilities can be obtained in Wilmington. By April of 1964, 98 was moved out of Stratford property and was shipped over to the Wilmington and Western Railroad, where she would return to service in 1972 of October. Throughout her career, she would operate excursions throughout the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s. By 2017, 98 went under a FRA inspection of required assembly of a locomotive for inspection and repair. But until 98 returns, at least we'll still have Wilmington and Western 58 around to keep passenger trains going.
Yeah.
Yeah, so of course that's a little history of 98, since 98 was only at the Strasburg Railroad for at least a few years before it was to the Wilmington and Western.
Are there any other Is there anything in particular? Yeah, we really need Steven right now.
Yes, we really need him. I mean, if anything, if we can't get Steven, we might as well just get someone else to join. Because this is taking forever.
I'm going to call him directly.
Hopefully, of course, we can. Hopefully, don't leave this a call because we're going. Okay.
Okay, let's see.
Let's see.
Josh, I'm not adding you back until you watch all the videos I sent. Remember? They were supposed to teach you. And then you'll be ready. But, crap, Steven! We need you! We need you! I'm turning old. Okay, I'll send them in a little bit then. Steven! Steven! Steven's not answering!
Oh, goodness. This is going to be cool.
Fuck it.
Well,
we need someone to tell us about the 475.
Well, I can't do. Oh, let's see. We got it. All right. I'll start a little bit about 475, and if Stephen joins, we'll let him continue the history. I feel like what? Right. I'll start history on 475, and if Stephen joins, I'll let him continue. Anyway, we'll talk about the Norfolk and Western 475. Norfolk and Western 475 is a 480 Mastodon built by the Norfolk and Western, built by the Lionel Locomotive Works in 1906, as it was part of the Norfolk and Western's first order of M classes, numbered 375 to 499. The 475 was the 101st of 125 M-class locomotives to be built. It worked on the NW hauling freight and coal trains. Later, it was reassigned to branch line duties where the big locomotives, such as the Y-class, the K-class, and the J-class, would be used for passenger service and heavy freight trains. It was later retired in 1956, completing 50 years of service. But from 1957 to 1958, it was thought of as a 19th century locomotive with a thick diamond smokestack and oil headlamp, and hauled a Salem shifter local passenger train. By September of 1960, 475 was placed on display in Roanoke, Virginia, where in 1962 it was sold to Virginia Scrap Iron and Metal Company scrapyard, and would stay there until 1980, where it was sold to the H.S. Cooper and then conveyed to the Pella Historical Site, being stored at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. Later in 1982, she was donated to the Boone and Scenic Valley Railroad in 1985 and moved to Munich for display in 1986. But then, in July of 1991, her real career came, where she was bought by the Strasburg Railroad for over $100,000 and was restored to operational condition in November 6 of 1993. In 2004, Norfolk and Western 475 was refitted into her original Norfolk and Western appearance and continues running it to this day. And even during its times, she even got the cosplay as her lost sister, number 382. Which many people know it as the Virginian Creeper.
Creeping. Yes,
the Virginia Creeper.
Creeping.
But later on in 2019, the 475 would be given her new look, as her original look was given her headlight. Her headlight was moved to the center of the smallbox store for a special door front, which we will talk about later when the time comes.
Yeah.
And, special fact, in 2000, 475 would star in Thomas and the Magic Railroad, which was one of my favorite Thomas childhood movies in 2000.
Yes.
And it was first Strasburg to travel all the way out to the Harrisburg Transportation Center. I mean, I was quite surprised that they actually brought 475 all the way out to Harrisburg for this.
Well, what do you expect? It's the only operating 480 in the world right now. And
Agreed.
To be honest, I'm surprised that not a lot of people have actually taken 480s into consideration.
Yeah, because all of the 480s so far that are preserved are just Norfolk and Western.
Except for one, which we talked about in locomotives that haven't operated in the preservation era. But anyway, let's see what is the next locomotive.
Let's see.
Yes, Great Western number 90, also known as, their biggest locomotive.
Yes.
To be honest,
before anybody asks, no, 90 was not built for the Great Western Railway of the United Kingdom. It was built for the Great Western Railway.
Mike?
In 1924 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works, and was used to pull sugar beet trains about 40 to 50 cars length for the railroad. And number 90 was one of the largest and most powerful locomotives of the roster. And it had an accident where by a grade crossing and knocked onto its firemen's.
Mike, you're cutting out a lot.
Sorry.
Look under your pillow.
Oh, God.
Hey, see. Michael said you were cutting out a lot, and yeah, you're cutting out.
Oh, dear.
Oh boy.
Am I fine now?
You're fine now.
Yeah, you're fine.
All right. As I was saying, in 1944, 90 hit a truck at a grade crossing and knocked onto its fireman's side, killing both the fireman and the truck driver. 90 was sent to the CB&Q shops in Denver for repairs. By the late 1950s, 90 was occasionally used in excursion service on the Great Western. And on one such excursion in 1963, Strasburg Railroad's chief mechanical officer, Hubert Leaf, met the Great Western superintendent, a man who grew up in the vicinity of the Strasburg Railroad, and struck a deal in which the Great Western would contact the Strasburg Railroad as soon as 90 was available for purchase. 90 was purchased by April 5th of 1967 for a total price of $23 million, which is over $175,000 if you count 2019.
23 million?
Yes, you heard that right, folks. $23 million. I am not joking.
I need to go for a little bit. But you can continue talking about the 90.
Oh, okay. Will everyone still hear me?
Let's see here. I'm here, you're here, and Big Mean Steam Machine is here. Basically, only the three of us are here. So, yeah, we can hear you.
All right, then. Well, anyway, continuing on with the history of Strasburg 90 while Andrew is away. Continuing on, in 1968, Strasburg 90 was borrowed to operate alongside one of their Canadian Pacific D5462 classes, number Canadian Pacific 1278, mostly known as, which of course many of us know, be involved in one of the boiler explosion accidents. And during that time, Andy was actually borrowed for the excursion to help out the Canadian Pacific D5, where it would pull trips around Jim Fort, Pennsylvania, would act as an engine for double-headed duties between Belfman and Jim Fort, Pennsylvania. After the trips concluded, Andy was returned to the Strasburg Railroad. And what about 1278? Well, 1278 is at the Age of Steam Roundhouse, currently on display, but will possibly never run anytime soon due to her big boiler explosion in June 16, 1995. And can we have F's in the chat for the 1278 while we're at it? Anyways, am I cutting out?
No.
No, I think you're good. I'm back.
Hey.
All right.
So I talked about 90 helping out the 1278. You know, engine that had the boiler explosion thing.
Yeah. We won't talk about
Anyways, continuing on, and he will continue to operate for many years and would have several modifications, including one of my most favorite ones, which was in 2017, where in 2016, her spoke were repainted from a Great Western Silver to dark gray. And speaking of Great Western Silver, in 2013, Great 90 was repainted into original Great Western livery for a Lero Productions photo charter, which they gave 90 her original Great Western paint scheme, where she would operate a passenger excursion and haul photo charter freights.
Nice.
And it is because of her reading 6-chime whistle.
Yes.
What?
Her great Reading 6-chime whistle.
And fun fact, sometime during December of 2013, 90 had a different whistle that time. She was, for one time only, she would wear a reading signal mode hooter whistle. Which, to be honest, I don't think it would sound pretty good on 90. For the Ghostbuster or Carpenters, it would sound great. But luckily, 90 had its switch on back after that day. Today, Strasburg Railroad 90 continues to be one of everyone's most beloved 210 decapods, alongside Frisco 1630, which is another surviving decapod that operates today. And 90 has become a fan favorite 210 for me. I got to see her so many times throughout the years.
I've never actually seen a 210 in person.
Yeah.
I'd love to see one.
Now,
Well,
let's see.
I guess
Steve can try to come.
Well,
I'm messaging Steven to join the voice chat. Let's move on to another locomotive. A certain tank engine, shall we?
Yeah, this one, a lot of fans are gonna go crazy over. So, floof the hair for power!
Wait. But this is for the people who saw Jin's top 10 least steam locomotives list.
Least favorite.
Oh, God.
But anyway.
Yes.
We're
talking about none other than Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal number 15. Now there's a good reason to why I love this locomotive, and you will figure out in a minute.
Well,
but anyway, What, Andrew?
I'd like to talk about the history of the actual engine, and then you could talk about its life at Strasburg.
Okay.
So, Brooklyn Eastern Terminal number 15 is an 060 saddle tank locomotive built, well, of course, for switching purposes by Porter. And, it spent 50 years as a switcher, and it had a couple of other brothers, which actually still exist today, those being, I think, 14 and
16.
Yes, 14 and 16. But either way, 15.
Maybe more besides them. I think there may be 18 too. But we're focusing on 15 basically.
Yeah, we're focusing on number 15. Number 15 was bought by the Strasburg Railroad later on, while they were still blooming, of course. But the thing is, the locomotive's fuel capacity was just too low to constantly, travel without having to constantly refuel with water. So to say the least, the fuel consumption. So now they just had a locomotive that was fully operational, but they had nothing to do with. But then, Mike, if you can take the mic.
Yes, but remember when we talked about 475 as being used for Thomas and the Magic Railroad? Well, they decided to do something different. They decided to take. Hold on one sec. They decided to take 15 and restore it to operational condition. This time as a fully operational Thomas the Tank Engine. And I gotta say, that is very cool. Unlike the original Thomas, we will talk in a little while, this Thomas they did was different. For this one, this Thomas had visible cylinders and a cow catcher, and it has a dummy coupling hook at the front, which can be replaced with a knuckle coupler when needed. And this is the only steam operational Thomas in the United States, while all other ones are just dummy units of Thomas.
Yeah.
Basically used on Illinois Railway Museum, the Connecticut Valley Railroad, etc. And of course, this locomotive didn't operate until 1999, because in 1998, Thomas ran with, of course, like we mentioned before, Pennsylvania Railroad 9331, because it was not operational at the time. And of course, it did not have no coupling lines going for the cylinders, and it had a much thicker face. And to really make Thomas fans scream in panic, well, most of them, during the first run, the eyeballs on Thomas melted due to the heat of the smoke from the smoke box. Oh, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, we're not kidding.
Wait, are there photos of that or video?
Sadly, Peanut, there weren't, and it was not.
Oh no! I wish there were. I would love to see that.
That would have been hilarious.
I'm sorry, but that was only during its time it was still in production to be restored, all right?
Oh, man. Would have been hilarious to see some sort of
Children.
video of some sort of Karen mom filming, Thomas, and then just the eyes melting out, flames burning out of the eye sockets, right?
Jeez! That's brutal, but hilarious.
Exactly!
Oh my god, who would have expected that?
Woo! But either way,
fully operational and would be used in the 10 years of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends special, where they operated the first Dalwood Thomas excursions. And for fun facts, later in 2014, Thomas got an upgrade, where it has its original face taken off and was given an animatronic operational face, which would have his eyes still moved, but was also given the ability to open his mouth. And I gotta say, that was very impressive. And during its time, Thomas would speak for the first time ever. And his voice lines were recorded by the original voice actor. Hold on, I'm gonna find it. His voice was provided by original Thomas and Friends voice actor from the CGI series, Martin Sherman. And this year, for 2020, Thomas would make one of the best runs ever yet. Thomas would operate from Strasburg Station all the way out to Lemon Place, pulling the push and pull service train, operating backwards to Lemon Place and returning in forwards to Strasburg Station.
wow.
And I gotta say, that was one of the best. Yes, it's true. And I even got to see Thomas 2 times. One in August and one when I went to go see 8618. But Thomas did not operate at Lemon Place for the first time, There was also a Japanese special called A Wonderful American Journey with Thomas and Connie, where Thomas would be seen running around Carpenters and Cherry Hill, and Thomas would even perform the ghost whistle.
A what? A what whistle?
Ghost whistle.
Oh.
Yes. But today, Thomas is still in operational condition and is still one of my favorite tank engines in the United States. And the only thing I have to say is a big thank you for the Strasburg crew for making a real-life Thomas the Tank Engine. And of course, there are many. The reason I talk about this is because I prefer this Thomas better than the original Thomas, which of course basically is
none other than the London, Brighton, and South Coast Railways E2 Class 060 tank engines.
Yes, which of course as Jim mentioned in his top 10 least steam locomotive list, he kind of finds Thomas the Tank Engine as an embarrassment. While Back to the Future, on the other hand, wasn't an embarrassment.
Well, to say the least, because of Thomas, the railroad community has become a bit of a disgrace.
Yeah.
I mean, 70% of the railroad community talks about Thomas. Because it's like, oh, I wish they preserved the E2, so I wish they could build them. They were terrible engines.
I don't even think that's the worst of it. Maybe one of the worst parts is the fact that people don't really anytime you reference Thomas, right? And anytime you reference Thomas, no, not that. Anytime you reference railways, someone's got to reference Thomas.
Exactly. And that's why I prefer Ivor the Engine over Thomas.
Yes. Yeah, I know, but you still gotta give me credit though. I really do love Thomas the Tank Engine because it's really been my favorite show ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah, we do have to give credit to the Strasburg Railroad for doing this.
And now we have immature man children who refuse to give up on this little tank engine.
Well, I'm not immature.
You are.
I'm not saying you're one of them. I'm just saying there are people who are like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but if you want to learn more about the E2s, just check out Jim's top 10 least favorite steam locomotives list.
And to be honest, I think I know how the E2s could have actually been good engines. Because here's a fun fact. 90% of the locomotive was completely recycled from other locomotives that existed already. The boiler was
do you know what?
Huh?
All right, you can continue. I'll tell a fun fact about the Southern.
Well, those parts were one, the boiler from a experimental 442 Atlantic, and to say the least, that boiler was basically the entire problem with the locomotive. The engine was so hungry, if you catch my drift. Like, it drank a lot of water and needed a lot of coal for such a tiny engine. So it was not.
15 is.
And another thing is, the locomotives at high speeds, they would shake from side to side, like just
we get you. I mean, honestly, that's the thing. Like, you'd think that for a side tank that it wouldn't, shake from side to side. In fact, the only problem with side tanks is getting in between the frames for maintenance.
But
if anything, saddle tanks have the tendency of rocking back and forth at high speed.
Well, that wasn't the only problem. Well, not only one of. There were so many problems with the damn E2s. But either way, another problem was the system for the actual pump. So to say the least, these tanks, they were low capacity. I mean, originally they were, but they quote-unquote extended them from like just a square to like a sort of an extra box right here.
Yeah.
But either way, the pumps for them continued to fail multiple times to where they would have to continue replacing them over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I quote from a magazine that interviewed one of the engineers that actually fired E2s back in his day. And I quote, "They were a good shunting locomotive, but nothing more." And the thing is, they weren't even good at shunting either. They were sort of, but the thing is, these engines were too long to actually go around these tight curves that shunters need to be able to go around. But yeah, to say the least, these engines were not well balanced, not well designed, and basically were just a complete disaster. And the funny thing is, this is the representation of a typical tank engine now. And that is a disgrace.
Agreed. But like Jim said, I totally agree with Jim on his point in this video. I prefer the E2s to be extinct. The positive mean T1 birds, there are some good and some bad. The A2-2s, 1-2s, they were rebuilt from T2 Mikados, but now we're getting two new ones, one old and one new. And Bully's leader tried to do something, but was a failure.
And
E2s, no worries there. They can stay extinct.
They can. I mean, guys, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I wanted to design an E2 XXX.
Hey, what of that funny thing that I was about to say?
What?
Well, first off, it's not really fair to compare Jim's list to argue with the E2 because even Jim's list has a bunch of contradictions. For example, that he despises, he shows immense hatred for the E2 and shows no remorse for it. And yet he shows some remorse for the S1 and hates the S1 even more. And even contradicts the point that he made about the DeLorean compared to E2 because, well, which would you rather ride? A cool, sleek Art Deco locomotive or an industrial shunter?
An Art Deco locomotive.
I'd ride neither.
True.
I'd rather ride on a plank of wood on the river.
Jim said that, well, at least the DeLorean looks better than the E2.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the S1 actually did look pretty good.
Yeah, like the S1, we can knock.
And also the fact that, well, you can't really compare the A2/2 Pacifics with, well, what's being a new build. So there are some benefits to the A2/2. For example, they had better mileage. No, not better mileage. They had better expansion and free range around the system than the original P2 Mikados. Whereas the P2 Mikados were only limited to the Edinburgh and Aberdeen main line.
Well,
But to say the least, I still love the Thomas. I still love Thomas the Tank Engine, aka BED-15 at Strasburg Road, and Thomas will always be my favorite tank engine at Strasburg.
But guys,
but now it's time to talk about a certain Northern that visited.
Not yet. But one last thing. You know how I mentioned I wanted to make an E2 XXX?
Yes.
It ended up looking like the E4. Exactly like the E4. So I was like, you know what? I give up. It's already created. Done.
But now it's time to talk about a certain Northern that came to Strasburg and visited 475 Thomas and the rest of the Strasburg Railroad engines.
Ah, yes. The good old J. The big J. 1 sec. Be right back.
The Norfolk and Western 611. So as many as you all know, we talked about the 611 before in our previous video, the Norfolk Southern Steam Excursion Program. But of course, for those who don't know about the 611, well, I'll tell you about the 611. The Norfolk and Western 611, like we mentioned before, is a J-class locomotive built by the Norfolk and Western Railway in the Roanoke shop. The 611 is the only surviving J-class locomotive of the Norfolk and Western. She was used on passenger trains as just the Powhatan Arrow, the Pocahontas, and the Cavalier between Norfolk, Virginia, and Cincinnati, Ohio. By the late 1950s, the Norfolk Western began purchasing some diesel locomotives, and 611 will retire in the 1950s. However, she would be put on display in the Virginia Museum of Transportation for a while. But in 1982, 611 will return to service to operate under the Norfolk Southern Steam Program. Sadly, though, she would run only until 1994, when, of course, like we mentioned before, the rising costs and, of course, the allowance of where the steam locomotives could travel, and, of course, the railway accident caused the steam program to close. But later in 2013, a campaign called Fire Up 611 would be commenced to bring 611 back to operational service. And what do you know it? In May of 2015, the 611 returned to service. And now and of course, today she carries a name, the Spirit of Roanoke. But the main focus to why 611 is in this list is because in 2018, 611 was able to perform any excursions due to Amtrak's newest restriction on private charter trips. The only place that 611 could travel to was the North Carolina Transportation Museum. But In 2019, the Strasburg Railroad and the Virginia Museum of Transportation will team up to send 611 to the Strasburg Railroad to reunite with 475 in the course the N&W reunion of speed. The 611 would depart between August of 2019, and of course, when she got there, she got to meet the Canadian mogul, and of course, throughout the rest of the time, it pulled excursions with 475, 90, and even Strasburg, and even Thomas along with it. And I gotta say, I was very surprised when I got to see Thomas and 611 together when I went to go see Thomas last year. And sadly, though, after 611's reunion with 475, she returned to the North Carolina Transportation Museum, where she is still there today. But hopefully sometime soon, 611 can still continue excursion service on the line, and possibly maybe even return to Strasburg in the near future for a reunion.
Maybe.
But now comes the next part. What other locomotives can visit the Strasburg Railroad?
Well, I'm just pointing it out there, but since 611 is deemed as a very big mainline store, what if 2926 visited Strasburg?
Well, that would be impossible because, it's a Santa Fe Northern.
It's huge.
What?
It's huge.
Yeah. But hey, 611 did fit on the Strasburg Railroad line.
Yeah. And, well, 2926 is probably bigger than 611. Actually, compare. How big is 611 compared to 2926? I'm curious.
Well, 611 is, let's see, 611 has driver diameter 70 inch, length 109 feet, width 11 feet, height 16 inches. And let's see, go to 2926. Driver 2926 driver wheels 80 inch, length 120 feet. Jim, hello.
Oh.
Hey, Jimbo.
Hey, Jim.
Jim, you just missed my big moment when I talked about Thomas and the E2 comparison.
Wait,
Yeah.
are you still alive?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we're still live.
Holy fucking shit. I didn't even realize that I was still in time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Talked a whole lot about both the engines, including Thomas, and even we're talking about 611.
No, we already talked about 611 the last time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but, we talked about it this time because it visited Strasburg before,
Oh, yeah.
And now we're talking about other steam locomotives that can visit the Strasburg Railroad sometime. And I have a good example, too. Great Western Railway number 60, another locomotive from the Colorado Railroad.
Oh, yeah.
Black River. I want to see them both return together and reunite, and name it the Great Western Railway of Colorado Steam Reunion event.
Ooh, I have an idea. What if once Boston and Maine 3713 is restored to operation, what if it goes to Strasburg for a little while?
Wait, you said 1187?
No, Boston and Maine 3713.
Oh, I was deaf. Okay. The Constitution.
Yes.
When it comes to locomotives that you'll never, ever be able to see on the Strasburg, ever, well, 4014 springs to mind.
Yeah, that's 4014
And let's
is
not forget
generally just...
1218.
Yeah, to mention 1218.
A little bit smaller, but still overkill. Yeah.
I mean...
Maybe the tank engines like Lehigh Valley Coal 126, Little Coal 85, or Flagpole Company 75. They can operate at Strasburg.
Hmm.
I haven't really heard of those engines, so I wouldn't know.
True. What about 765? 757 was transported to Strasburg by 1223 in 1970s.
Really?
Yeah, I'm telling you the truth.
The 1223 operated in the 1970s?
Yes, and hold 757 the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. But seriously, you think 765 would visit Strasburg Railroad in the future?
I mean, it seems small enough. Well, sort of. But yeah.
It's big enough to draw the crowds, but small enough to still, kind of work there. Like it won't be that much overkill.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, what if
small enough that it could still also, operate somewhat happily on the Strasburg?
What if 4501 visited Strasburg?
That ought to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Also, I was recently watching. I was rewatching parts of other Burning Subjects episodes. And sorry if I'm going off topic here, but I don't think that we talked about a particular modification that the 4501 received in the early 2010s.
40 what?
That it was fitted out with the Chinese copy of the Worthington feed water heater system.
Oh, yeah, we forgot about that.
What crap?
I'm not making that up. I saw that in that documentary, and then there was one.
What are some? Let's see if anyone has something in the chat. Is there anyone? What locomotives do you think can operate at Strasburg? We're thinking nothing bigger than a 284, or because 611 I feel like was a little bit of an overkill.
Well,
you also want does it have to be an American engine that you're thinking of?
It has to be able to, operate in America.
Okay.
What about Leviathan?
Well, let's see.
How about the Leviathan?
I think Steven is going to rip my head off for this when I mention it, but how about everybody's least favorite canned Canuck, Canadian National 3254? If somehow someone was able to refurbish it properly,
I mean, to be honest, I feel like that thing is doomed because of, bent frame.
Bent frame, poor fuel economy, rough ride quality.
Huh.
Yeah.
Ooh!
Here's a 3254.
I have one.
Maybe episode 10, we should talk about Steamtown.
Hold on.
Mike, that's a good one right there. We can probably talk about it.
Andrew, what were you going to say?
Actually, speaking of Steamtown, remember that, what is that Canadian National 464T that they got operating?
47.
Yeah. What is...
Oh, Steven's here.
Unfortunately, I don't think that engine is going to run any time ever because the original paperwork for
guys.
boiler certification got published in Roundhouse Fire.
Okay.
Steven, you may rip my head off because I dared to mention the canned Canuck a few minutes ago.
Steven.
How about Strasburg, not Steamtown?
Steven, you are an hour late.
Could have potentially operated on Strasburg.
Steven,
and I dare to mention 3254.
Steven,
Why could 3254 operate at Steamtown? It has a fucking bent frame and all those other mechanical issues.
Steven, you are an hour late.
Even I'm a little earlier. And I was shocked.
I would love to see 425 visit Strasburg.
Ooh.
Maybe. Oh,
Or better yet, maybe Everett Railroad 11.
Huh. Has there ever been any Connies operate at Strasburg?
No, and thank fucking God there hasn't been, because Connies are just the most overrated wheel arrangement in history.
And
Let's send 734 there if within 20 years.
No, not 734. Wait, is the stream still going?
yeah, we're still going.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, I missed it because I was asleep or whatever, basically taking a nap.
Or if it pleases Steven, another potential locomotive that could run on Strasburg.
722, I guess, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Well, how about since Strasburg likes to run unusual engines? Like, note, Strasburg runs like very unique engines. I mean, a decapod, a mogul, and a mastodon. So, I mean, name other railroads that run those particular wheel arrangements.
Well, I know the Illinois Railroad Museum.
Preservation.
Yeah, in preservation, I meant.
1630 at the Illinois Railroad Museum is some place that operates a decapod.
That's the only other decapod, though. What about moguls, though?
Well, I think in the United States. When it comes to anywhere else,
Oh, yeah, in
decapods in the Netherlands and Germany.
yeah, but we're talking about.
there are plenty of decapods in the Netherlands.
But we're talking about America.
But I just thought I'd mention it.
It's okay.
Don't need to start barfing over foreign engines, even though technically I'm the biggest foreigner here because I'm from the Netherlands. I'm not from the United States.
Yes.
But basically in terms of.
But what about other 260s?
Moguls. I don't think. Well, wait. Sorry if I'm again mentioning engines preserved in the Netherlands, but there is a mogul type tank engine here.
A
and
tank
even
engine?
more unique and kind of unusual is that the crank axle, so the main pair of driving wheels, that's on the third driving axle rather than on the second.
Ooh, I think I know one. What if a thing? Are there any 460s operating?
460s in the United States?
Yeah, are there any operating?
I want to say the most overrated engine in the world, Sierra number 3. But I'm not sure if it's operating right now.
Like I think I said this before. I hate to mention this guy again because again it's beating a dead horse. But Mr. Accuracy during one of his Q&A videos, completely unedited Q&A videos, unfortunately, while I was watching, I heard him say to one of the questions, "Cool train." Yeah, I think that's a cool train. And I was like, wait, what? And then I rewinded the video, and he said, "What is your opinion?" Well, basically, somebody asked what his opinion was on Sierra number 3, and I was like, "Oh, of course, that fucking thing. It can't be some other obscure locomotive. Sure as hell not fucking Southern Pacific 1269 or fucking 3420 or any other obscure steam star. Of course, it's got to be Sierra number 3 because it was a movie star."
I got a good consolidation that could visit Strasburg.
What?
New Hope and Ivyland.
Number 40! Why didn't I think of that engine?
Because I visited 40 last year.
Lucky.
I'm surprised that nobody said Wilmington Western 58 or 98.
We actually...
It actually was at Strasburg at one point, but,
Guys,
never operated.
out of curiosity, did you also mention the 2 Betsy engines that operated there for a bit?
The what
Yes.
engines? Oh, yeah, we did. 1223
Okay,
and 7...
I gotta say, if somehow you're able to, if somehow rules regarding their bell pair fireboxes could be, softened up, you might be able to get them going again.
Ooh!
Because from what I've heard, maybe I'm repeating the information that you've already said here, but from what I've heard, the reason why they're no longer allowed to run is because,
Copper fireboxes.
yeah, they're made of copper instead of steel. But I think that's because of that unfortunate coincidence, you can't run a locomotive with a bell pair firebox anymore. But honestly, I'd say, maybe asking a bunch of British steam enthusiasts can have them checked out. Because
Since when can you not operate a bell pair firebox locomotive?
I think that's just in the United States, given the poor coincidence on the 1223 and 7002.
Wait, what about the 1361 then?
I'm not 100% sure on that one because that's like the ultimate fancy locomotive that I pretend doesn't really exist. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But basically, because those Belpaire fireboxes on the 1223 and 7002 happen to be made of copper, they tended to get thin much quicker, and because of that, they were kind of outlawed, I think. But meanwhile, look in the United Kingdom, and there are plenty of steam engines operational there with Belpaire fireboxes.
So basically, just because 1223 and 7002 had copper fireboxes that just happen to be Belpaire, the States just fucking thinks that Belpaire fireboxes are just fucking.
I think that Owen said one time while we were having a chat in the Cylindercocks Discord server. But I think it's kind of like that, yeah. Again, maybe have some British gentlemen come over, see if they can, let's see if they're able to build brand new Belpaire fireboxes made out of steel to fit inside those engines. And if the demand is there to see both of those little Pensy engines refurbished to working order, put those steel fireboxes in there, and maybe it should work out just okay.
Why the fuck do they even have copper fireboxes to begin with?
Early days, I suppose?
Now, that's not a bad idea, Tim.
I think I have an idea of an engine that could visit Strasburg.
And what is that?
It's a tiny boy. I was thinking this might be a bad idea, but
Is it Nano 58?
no,
Okay, never mind.
too small. Way too small. But
That's what he said.
But anyway, I was thinking Baldwin 26, but
That wouldn't be a bad idea.
it wouldn't be a bad idea, but it wouldn't be a good one either. Or would it be a good one? Or would it be a...
Dude, that's nothing compared to what I just came up with for
3254?
no, for 4060 to visit Strasbourg.
I literally...
Pacific 4466.
Oh.
To the east.
Oh.
Because, coal-fired.
UP. But at least it's a UP Steam Star that isn't actually owned by the UP.
The funny thing is...
overrated.
The funny thing...
Fair.
UP 4466? I think that, I honestly think...
4466.
I think...
The old shopgoat at Cheyenne.
I know. I think that 4466 is a little bit underrated, actually.
I literally just said that because it wasn't owned by either certain service.
Yeah. In fact, recently, me and Mike actually built a little model of 4466 in Gmod.
Yeah.
Little
Looks
trip.
pretty good.
And the funny thing is, we also did a double header.
To make it look like an oil burner. From,
Because of the Sacramento organic coal.
And we also did a double header with 4466 and Baldwin 26. So that was pretty cool. But either way, that was this episode of Burning Subjects. Tune in next week.
I'm pretty sure we know Viv wants to see for his next top 10 list.
Yes. You want to know what this top 10 list is?
The next, please let it be Soul Survivors. Please let it be Soul Survivors. Please let it be Soul Survivors. Soul
Survivors is coming in a month. Don't worry. That's gonna be Jim. Soul Survivors is gonna be a Christmas thing.
Oh.
I'm saving it for Christmas. But yeah. Next week's top 10 list is going to be top 10 overrated Steam excursion stars.
Yes, I can't wait to do this one. And Tuesday? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
Number one. Sierra number 3.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's going to be number 1, but who knows what number 1's going to be on that list.
Yeah, because I'm the one making the list.
I am looking forward to that episode.
If you're gonna put the 4014 high, please don't put it too high.
I know it's not going.
What about
Because it's a new, it's a baby boy to the world of excursions.
Look,
Anyway,
look, I'll tell you right now, 4014 is nowhere at number 1.
Woo!
And I'm going to tell you
will
this.
Great Western
Here's
90 be in the list?
Huh?
Is Great Western 90 overrated?
Not overrated. It's like in that middle area, you know?
All right.
I think so anyway. But try guessing one more locomotive that's going to be on this list.
Oh, I know. Christopher's favorite locomotive.
Southern Pacific 4449.
Yeah. But anyway, well, that was this episode of Burning Subjects, and we will see you. And we will see you next time for the top 10 overrated steam excursion stars. And hope you guys.
It's working.